We're moments away from witnessing history in the making. 350 years ago, right here on the River Thames in London on this very day, the backdrop behind me, not far over there, would have been fully ablaze in one of the most spectacular catastrophes in the city's history. We're here tonight with a fire of our own to commemorate that event. It's a fire that also represents the major challenges faced by big cities to this day, our response to crisis and our ability to adapt, adjust and rebuild. It's time to immerse yourself in London's 1666. Hello and welcome to our live stream of London 1666. I'm Lauren Laverne and tonight I'm delighted to present to you a contemporary perspective on the Great Fire of London. I'll be guiding you through this once-in-a-lifetime collaboration between creator of large-scale arts projects Artichoke and the burn artist David Best, famous for his involvement in the Burning Man festivals. The magnificent structure behind me is a representation of the skyline during the Great Fire of London, and you can see right now it is just being ignited in a dramatic retelling of the events of September 1666. This marks a moment that saw London devastated, only to rise from the ashes and evolve into the resilient city that it is today. So tonight I'm going to be speaking to some of the people behind the build, as well as exploring the historical and artistic context around this unique project. No matter where you are or what you're watching on, you can join in on social media by using the hashtag London's Burning. Tell us about your favourite moments, your reaction to the burn, and how you're marking this iconic anniversary if you are. We will select some of the best messages to display on screen throughout the programme. So now it's time to get a closer look at the build itself and see what's happening out across the river. You'll already have noticed that the structure's not designed to catch fire as an instant raging inferno. Instead, it is designed to ignite slowly in a carefully choreographed sequence. It is the ultimate slow burn. While the flames begin to grow, I'm going to take the opportunity to speak to some special guests to give us a bit more insight into the project. I'm joined by the Artistic Director of the Royal Academy of Arts, Tim Marlowe. Hello, Tim. How are you?
Very good. I keep turning. It's unbelievable.
I know. Well, do. I mean, take a look at it, obviously. It's an incredible thing. The company behind the project, Artichoke, they have this long history of opening up the arts and bringing them into public spaces and, you know, to crowds like this one. Tell me a little bit about that. Is that what makes them unique?
I think it does, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of public art in Britain, but no one quite does it in the way that Artichoke does it. You know, they've put mechanical elephants, gigantic elephants in the streets of London.
The Sultan's elephant.
Spiders in Liverpool. They've illuminated Durham from your neck of the woods 4 times in the last 8 years. They made a temple in Derry, London Derry, where both sides of the community came together and kind of shared memories and a sense of loss, and then this thing was burnt. And they really do know how to take art into the broadest possible arena.
Okay. I mean, have you witnessed any arts projects quite like this one in your career so far? Something that represents a landmark in British history and something that is, I mean, it's momentary, it's on fire, it's going to be gone.
I've seen a shed blown up in the name of art, I've seen fireworks, I've seen artists bury themselves, I've seen the traces of an artist shooting himself in the hand or nailing himself to a car, but actually I've never seen anyone collaborate with so many people in such an extraordinarily and exciting way to make a commemorative replica of a skyline 350 years ago and then set fire to it. I mean, this is spectacle and then some.
I mean, David Best is the artist behind this. Can you tell me a bit about him, a bit about his work? You mentioned the project in Derry, London Derry, which was
he should be a lot better known. I mean, I think there's something slightly hippie-ish, West Coast about him. You know, he paints sculpts, he's made all sorts of odd things with cars and found objects, but he's a burn artist. And so much of what he does is experiential, and it only lives on in the memory of those who've seen it, and of course in their digital records, in their photographs. But he's someone for whom burning, he's turned it into an art form, and there is no one else in the world quite working in the same way that he does.
And you know, you are on the board, I think, of Artichoke.
I am, yeah. So I'm bound to be supportive, but they are a singular organisation.
But you will know them and know how will they be feeling tonight, you know, and how are you feeling looking at this?
I feel incredibly relaxed now and incredibly exciting. I mean, I know 1 or 2 people are saying all the effort going into this and now it's burning, but that's the point of it. I feel I'm taking part in some ancient ritual. I feel I'm taking part in some great commemorative act. Artichoke are great diplomats, but they're also fantastic at making sure things happen. And here it is happening. It's sublime. I feel
like some part of my kind of Viking DNA is just responding.
No, exactly, to and perhaps our even older DNA. You know, kind of the most ancient, the rediscovery of fire.
Thank you, Tim. Time now to take a look at how this project came about through a unique collaboration between creative arts company Artichoke and renowned burn artist David Best.
The way these projects tend to start is that quite often I have an idea or I have a commission from somebody and I think, which artist would work with this? Who do I know whose work I love?
My first meeting with Helen was a number of years ago when she was doing Lumiere. She had the vision and the dream of going to Derry and building a temple. Back at the beginning of mankind, when we were frightened by animals, we lit a fire and huddled around it. I use fire as a healing. You know, it's not used as a weapon.
What David's created here is not so much a faithful model of 17th century London, more an artistic impression of the skyline and the look of what Restoration London might have been like.
So what you're seeing is an interpretation of my drawings that have been reduced so that we could manufacture them here. We're able to put it together in a way that it's going to function. I forget how many, 190 buildings are going to be built. Scale buildings and 3 or 4 churches and towers and some factory buildings. The big hook for me was not necessarily the history of the London fire as much as it was the involvement of the kids from the community. What we're building here, some of these kids are never going to forget.
To actually accomplish it, to see all these people who've worked together to make something impossible possible, it's such a fantastic feeling.
I'm hoping that the public will go, wow, how did this thing come about? How did this thing come about?
So there you go. We've seen the light bulb moments that brought this huge undertaking together, and I'm joined by Helen Marriage, who you just saw in the film there. She is the director of Artichoke and the main person behind this incredible work of art. I mean, hello, congratulations. How do you feel?
Not quite over yet. I feel so relieved that it actually went up, because obviously when you do a live event, you never know. You say that this is going to happen, but you know the number of people who have to work on it to make something like this happen exactly on time as we promised, that's a huge thing, and pay tribute to the whole team who've made it work.
So Helen, we saw you in the film there talking about choosing artists that you love to work with. When you first got the brief for making a project about the Great Fire of London, did you instantly think of David Best?
Yes, I mean there were a few that I thought of. Karabos, who did the Fire Garden down at Tate Modern, but David was always central to our thinking, because we'd worked with him in Derry, Londonderry in 2015, an incredibly emotional project that brought together communities across the divide. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping that we could do something beyond spectacle, that it would be an incredible spectacle, but it would also be made from the communities in London that surround the city, so the poorer boroughs of Tower Hamlets, Hackney, Camden, Islington, Southwark, Newham, which is where we've recruited all these young people who weren't necessarily in work or training, and they came to learn the skills of their ancestors, because the things that they learned, putting together wooden buildings, that's exactly what would have had to happen in 1667 after the fire.
And was the Temple project in Derry, Londonderry, the first time that you'd worked with David?
Yes, absolutely. I knew him from America, from his work at Burning Man and other projects that he'd done, and I'd always loved it and wondered whether we could entice him over to the UK.
This is, of course, the culmination of a whole kind of season of events, the London's Burning Festival of Arts and Ideas. And there's been a lot of kind of different commemorations and different arts events happening. Can you talk us through a couple?
Yes, I wanted to look at contemporary threats to the city. So we looked at a piece called Hollow Scenes, which has been going on in Broadgate Arena, which is all about water, not about fire at all, because water, flooding, climate change, that's much more of a contemporary issue. The piece on the dome of St Paul's Cathedral that you might be able to see behind us at the moment.
The projection.
Yeah, the big projection
that,
piece.
I think, yes.
Flames and fire on the dome of St Paul's Cathedral, and a companion piece on the fly tower of the National Theatre by the artist Martin Farrell, exploring contemporary issues, other cataclysmic moments in London's history that have changed the world. So we've had about 6 different projects.
Okay, and I mean, what's been your favourite aspect of working on London 1666?
The thing I love about my work is that in order to make it happen, because we don't exist in any dedicated building, we only exist by the kind permission of those that we can partner with. So if you're me, you have to make friends with the Port of London Authority, the police, the City of London Corporation and their planning department. You're always talking to people who most people never come across in their daily lives, but we knit them. We're all looking at the...
I could just feel it for the first time. I could feel the kind of the heat.
It's really going up. So these people come together like a great big family, and we are only able to do the things that we do because, you know, the London Fire Brigade are here on the river with their fireboats, the River Police, the RNLI, the Coast Guard, so many people that, you know, the Dean of St Paul's, everybody that we've had to talk to who they have to be persuaded to say yes to this slightly maverick, unorthodox artwork. And yet somehow they all do. They join in with that spirit in order to offer something back to the public for free. You know, everything we do is free to the public. Audiences never pay. Well, and it is a great big sort of joint enterprise.
Thanks for undertaking that on our behalf. It's fabulous. Thank you very much, Alan. Now it's time to take a look at the structure, which, as you can see, is really starting to catch fire now. If you just joined us, I'm Lauren Laverne, and we are live streaming this landmark arts and history project commemorating the 350th anniversary of the Great Fire of London. Keep your messages coming in. If you want to speak to us, you can use the hashtag London's Burning, and we'll display some of our favourites during this live stream. Making such an enormous structure to set ablaze in the centre of London is no easy feat. It's taken months of planning and involved some complex problem solving and dedicated individuals to pull it off, including a team of 8 professional carpenters, 325 tonnes of granite and 2 50-foot barges. Take a look at this.
Artichoke just put together the most brilliant team of workers.
In terms of bringing a project like this together from a producer's point of view, you start with the basic idea and the basic concept in terms of the artist, the medium, the location, and then you're really piecing together everything from the tiny detail to really thinking about the bigger picture things as to, okay, so how might you make a sculpture of the 17th century skyline of London and put it somewhere where people are going to be able to see it and enjoy it.
David had come up with the initial idea, but I needed to kind of flesh out the actual design of the component parts. So there was a whole process of rescaling the sizes of buildings to make them work on this barge in the middle of the Thames.
So it was a really wonderful interpretation of my work. Okay, well, they were able to put it together in a way that it's going to function.
My role is to try and get all the logistics in place to enable the team to work and build the structure according to David Best's designs.
I'm Ben and I'm one of the carpenters on London 1666. In building these houses, I have been responsible for siting them onto the boats and building the final project.
My name's Ryan and I'm a metal fabricator. We've been welding the cleats to the deck of the boat here so that they can fit the wooden frames to it, which the houses will eventually sit on.
My name is Michael. I work as a labourer. The purpose of shoveling the gravel on this vessel is to prevent the steel that's on this vessel from warping.
Watching the sculpture assemble has been somewhat inspiring.
Man, I'm building this thing, and the best part of this thing is, you know, you get to light it on fire.
So we're obviously condensing what was 3 or 4 days of the original fire into a 30 to 40 minute narrative. But we're trying to just give a sense of how the fire spread across the city and how the large structures survived the longest, but then they dramatically came down at the end of the fire.
I feel so confident the way the crew has worked on this that my presence is only, I'm just another volunteer on it.
This project takes people beyond their comfort zone and really challenges them to think in different ways. For me, that means that it's a truly unique experience.
As we saw there, we've had some truly dedicated individuals involved in this project, and I'm lucky enough to talk to 2 of them now. I'm joined by Gary, one of the carpenters, and Michael, one of the labourers who've been working hard to complete the structures and get them finished in time for today. Guys, how does it feel? Apart from we can literally feel the waves of heat. I mean, what is it like to see and, you know, feel this project catch light and be here?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing at the moment. I mean, I can't believe how it's just gone up like that. Like, wow, it's just amazing. It's great to watch.
I mean, have either of you ever worked on anything like this before, or is this a first?
Never worked on anything like this before. It's a once in a lifetime, and it's been a thoroughly enjoyable experience from start to finish now, watching this as well. Yeah, it's really awesome.
Gary, you've been involved with the carpentry since the beginning of the project, I think. Is that right? I mean, tell me a little bit about that, the construction process. How's that been?
Basically, I got asked to come in and help with the construction of the whole process, and I got told that we was involved with some young Londoners that were going to get involved with no experience, etc. And yeah, I couldn't wait to get involved in the whole experience, so it's great. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, Michael, what about you? When did you come on board? How long have you been part of this, and how's it been for you?
I've been on board with this project for a total of a week, and it's been nothing short of excitement and exuberant, and it's an honor, actually.
And what's your role been? What have you been, your main responsibilities been in the time?
My role was a laborer, and part of my job is to make sure that the vessel doesn't burn.
Well, exactly. Tell me about that, because that is quite important. I mean, that's
Yes, it is.
It's achieved with the gravel, right? That's where that comes
Yes,
in.
that's correct. That's correct. The whole idea of the gravel is so that the vessel, as you could see, so that it doesn't warp, and also it prevents the vessel from catching on fire also. So, yeah.
And obviously, I mean, this building something and creating something and then setting fire to it. I mean, was that something that was new to you, that you were up for? Was that, because I guess in some ways it's counterintuitive, you know, especially in carpentry, you build these beautiful things and then you're going to burn it. We know you were excited. We heard that in the film.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of them things that when you get the initial layout and you see the plan, you look at it and you go, wow, this is huge. I mean, we're talking 120 metres long. There's 200 buildings on there. And we was told that we've got to try and educate these young Londoners how to build all this. Use the tools, use the equipment, assemble the houses, and to get that result now and watch it burn, I think it's great. I think these guys can take a lot from it. You know what I mean? Like these youngsters, they can take a lot from this. Look how many people are watching this. There's thousands of people here, and they can all walk away and say, I did that. So that's pretty cool.
That's incredible. Well, congratulations to you guys too, and thank you very much for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of it. Time now for something horribly different. Tonight we are remembering the events that happened here in London 1666. So we asked Horrible Histories author Terry Deary to dispel some of the myths surrounding the Great Fire of London and sort the fact from the fiction.
My lords, ladies and peasants, I'm Terry Deary, author of Horrible Histories. I've been researching the Great Fire of London, and I've uncovered some amazing myths about the fire itself. Of course, I wanted to know how the fire spread so quickly and was so devastating. My teacher explained. The houses in London at the time were covered in thatch, so one spark would send the whole building up in flames and very quickly spread. Sorry, sir, not quite true. Back in 1212, there'd been a huge fire, and thatch had been banned in London. The real reason it spread so quickly was in Pudding Lane there were warehouses packed with oil and tar and rope and even brandy. They were an explosive combination. Plus, there was a strong east wind which spread it, and the fire started at night when people were asleep and slow to react. My teacher tried to tell me that the Great Fire of London was actually a good thing. The plague had been raging through London, and the Great Fire put an end to it once and for all. Sorry, sir, not true. The plague was already on the wane, and the plague covered a much wider area than the fire ever did. Another myth. My teacher tried to tell me that the Great Fire wasn't that deadly. Amazingly, fewer than 10 people died as a result of the Great Fire of London. Not true. Oh yes, there were fewer than 10 recorded deaths, but what about the ones who were incinerated and left with no trace? Or the poor people who weren't even recorded as existing in the first place? And then there were those who were left homeless. They were put up in temporary accommodation up in places like Moorfields, where they tried to survive a harsh winter, but many died of cold or hunger or disease. They were the real victims of the Great Fire of London. So there we have it, my amazing myths about the Great Fire of London. You see, sir, you are mostly wrong.
A little snapshot there into some of the history and mystery surrounding the Great Fire of London. Now, to talk to us a little bit more about life in London in 1666, I'm joined by Professor Kate Williams and author of 1666, Plague, War and Hellfire, Rebecca Riddell. Welcome, both of you.
Hello. Hi.
Kate, take me back to London 1666. What was happening at the time?
Well, London 1666 is this huge city, 500,000 people, nearly 500,000 people, and it's on the brink of modernity. So on one hand, you have Charles II, restored 6 years ago. He's opened the city, he's opened the theatres to foreign travel, to foreign visitors. And then you've got the old London. You've got the plague that's ravaged it only a year before. And there's also paranoia and resentment. We're at war with France, we're at war with Holland. And what's vital is that the city is it's the core of London, the beating heart. And particularly in political terms, it's the Republican core. That's where the most anti-monarchy feeling is felt. So you don't want to get on the bad side of them if you're the king.
Okay, right. I mean, there are a few different accounts, aren't there, Rebecca, about the cause of the fire. What do you think it was? What do we know best?
Well, I think we have to accept that it was started in Thomas Farriner's bakehouse. That's the accepted theory. There was lots of testimony attesting to that. But actually, shortly after the fire and during the fire as well, there were lots of rumours and conspiracies that it might have been started by the Dutch or the French. There was also a watchmaker that claimed to have started the fire himself, which was impossible because he was away from the city at the time. But he was executed at Tyburn for that crime.
Wow. Okay, but we think, as best we know, an accident to begin with.
An accident in Thomas Farriner's bakehouse, yes. And then it spread very quick.
The spread, though, I mean, that could have presumably been arrested. Kate, why did it spread so far so fast?
Well, it's amazing, isn't it, Lauren, that a fire in a tiny oven could then burn the whole city. But there are two reasons. Number one, it's because the city is a tinderbox. It's all wooden. The roofs are thatched, and it's got these kind of overhanging balconies and signs that make it really easy for the fire to jump over the road as well as along. So it's this tinderbox. And then also the authorities are just too slow. They're supposed to be fire authorities. They're supposed to pull down the buildings. What they don't is the mayor comes and he says, oh, well, to paraphrase, a woman could urinate and push it out. So actually, rather rude.
Mayor?
That's what he said. And
Wow.
he doesn't pull down the buildings. And by the time that the king overrides him and says, let's pull down the buildings, it's too late. The fire's taken hold and it comes down to the river. And because so many of the warehouses have got inside them flammable gunpowder, sugar, it's a complete sort of fire wall. And so it is gathering pace, it is everywhere, and it simply cannot be stopped.
I mean, what about 1666 as a year, Rebecca? Is this a kind of crucial turning point in British history? Why did you decide to write a whole book about it?
Well, it's a really interesting turning point in British history, well, English history and then British history as a whole. But I think the key message is that we actually managed to rebuild quite quickly afterwards. And I think it's a message of hope rather than despair.
Okay. I think we can see in the background there we've got some of our fireboats, which they're not putting the fire out, if you're watching at home and you're wondering. They're misting the fire, which is, as the granddaughter of a coal miner, my dad has all these kind of terms for different things that you could do with fires. He would talk about blazing fires. They're misting the fire. Not putting out. It's a little bit more specific than that. You can see behind me that the representation of 17th century London is fully ablaze, with some of the buildings destroyed by the heat of the fire. Let's take another look. ...350 years ago today, one of London's most iconic buildings, St Paul's Cathedral, would have been the latest victim of the Great Fire. Having stood previously at the centre of London for over 500 years, it's hard to imagine the reaction of Londoners when they saw this landmark go up in flames. As you can see, artist Martin Farrell is projecting flames onto the dome of St Paul's tonight as part of the anniversary commemoration of the fire. We asked historian Susanna Lipscomb to investigate this building's involvement in the Great Fire.
Today, the beautiful dome of St Paul's Cathedral graces the skyline as an internationally famous landmark. But at around 8 p.m. on the 4th of September 1666, it was a very different picture.
Today I've come to meet Head of Collections, Simon Carter.
So what exactly happened on the 4th of September 1666?
The flames are first spotted on the roof at about 8 o'clock on the 4th by this boy William Taswell, who can see them all the way over in Westminster. And because of the wind, the flames take hold very quickly, but also because the cathedral is surrounded by this wooden scaffolding. That really is what helps the cathedral to burn with great ferocity. You have these reports from people like John Evelyn, Samuel Pepys, about the stones exploding like grenades, the lead of the roof melting and running down Ludgate Hill. It's a really apocalyptic scene.
The fire which tore through Old St Paul's was devastating, but not everything was completely destroyed.
So what have we got here?
This is the funeral effigy of John Donne.
And how did his monument survive so miraculously intact when so many others perished?
And we think that's to do with, again, him being in the south choir aisle, but also his shape like a cigar, and that probably helped him to slide down to safety in the crypt.
So this is a very special place, Simon. This is somewhere people don't normally get to go.
Well, that's right. It's called the Triforium, and it's a first-floor gallery that runs all the way around the cathedral.
Are these the actual chunks of masonry that the witnesses describe as flying like grenades?
That's right. They were dug up in the South Churchyard, and they're from all different periods of the life of that pre-fire cathedral.
Do you have any favourites?
One of my favourites is this very earliest stone from about 1087. It's a Romanesque stone, and it's got red and yellow paint still on it.
The city and its cathedral was in ruins after the fire, but there was one man who would go on to reshape much of the city, and who was also responsible for a visionary new design for the St Paul's which would rise from the ashes, Sir Christopher Wren.
What sort of plans did he draw up, and how radical were they at the time?
They were incredibly radical, considering what the previous cathedral had looked like and the rest of London looked like. He was introducing something that was totally new to London.
And how did he persuade Charles II that he was the man to rebuild the cathedral?
Wren was already on the spot. He was helping Charles with the pre-fire cathedral, its repairs. But in order to win the job, he created a model to sell his idea.
From Gothic spires to its iconic dome, in times of war and peace, and as a constant place of worship, St Paul's Cathedral remains at the heart of London's ever-changing skyline.
And you can see behind me that the structure is really starting to come down now. It's quite exciting to watch. We can feel the heat where we are out on this little jetty, and the crowd every time that a kind of big portion of the structure falls are giving kind of oohs and ahs. It's quite an exciting atmosphere down here. So we heard there about Christopher Wren's design of the new St Paul's Cathedral that we see here today. Now, to talk us through the reconstruction of London in the aftermath of the Great Fire, we're joined by award-winning architect and TV presenter Piers Taylor. Welcome, Piers.
Hi, Lauren.
So, I mean, we can see the structure kind of starting to be laid waste to, really. I mean, it's really going up. What did you make of seeing it in the flesh and seeing the recreation of the skyline?
It was extraordinary because what it did was give you a sense of how dense the city was in 1666 and how closely packed in all of those buildings were.
We've heard a little bit about the materials. I mean, tell me a little bit about the architecture. Essentially, it's medieval, right?
That's right, and mainly made from timber, which is obviously highly combustible, but then covered in tar and pitch and often inside combustible materials. So as soon as there was a spark at the end of a long, hot summer, everything went up. And because they were so close to one another, the fire just carried from one building to another to another.
And people there was kind of a certain amount of pressure to modernise, as I understand it. Is that right? People were kind of talking about, we should take these down, we should replace them with brick structures for various reasons.
That's right, partly aesthetic, but also because of the danger of fire. But of course, it was expensive to knock down everything and replace it with brick. And until the fire, people couldn't afford to do it. But after the fire, everyone was forced to use brick.
So when the fire happened, after the devastation, there were several plans, weren't there, and several options when it came to, putting forward what we were going to replace this with. And some of them were quite elaborate configurations that people came up with.
They were. Given that London was a dense, ad hoc medieval city, the 5 schemes all proposed quite European models of redevelopment big squares, big, long, straight boulevards and grids. But of course, being English, we didn't really go for the grand projet. We wanted just to muddle through as we were, really. So none of those plans, one of which was Christopher Wren's, were implemented.
But we just ended up with his spectacular churches instead, which is pretty good.
We did, that's right, yes.
Thank you so much, Piers. Now, all evening we've heard about themes of displacement, recovery and community, and these continue now as the project of London 1666 has supported unemployed young Londoners to work alongside the artist David Best and Artichoke to design and build an extraordinary sculptural representation of 17th century London. Let's take a look.
It's really exciting being part of like something so huge. I feel quite honoured, to be honest.
Well, we're going to build a project that I don't even know who you are, but we're working together as a team.
It was an actual shock, like, wow, is this actually what we're doing now?
We're building houses that back in the day, how they used to look before the Great Fire of London.
What we're trying to say to these young people is, you can do this.
Well, the main things on this project I've learned is like carpentry, design and technology. That's what I've aimed for a little while, to go somewhere and literally work hard.
I'm communicating with people that I would never meet usually. So now it's kind of inspired me to do more construction work.
It makes me feel like I could do like anything, to be honest.
When you're thinking and you're just like, I've done that, like it just makes you really, really happy. I don't know, it makes me really proud of myself.
My aim is that I want to bump into these and say, do you know what? You did that. You helped everyone else do that. You helped me do that. And that's the main thing from this project I want to see as a result.
To be able to do something like this, it's not a chance you really get that often.
Afterwards, what we always hope is that that legacy continues on, that the young people who've been part of this project are going to be offered apprenticeships and traineeships, that beyond the memory of the event itself, there are real opportunities for people to take part in.
As a direct cause of being offered this placement, in the end of it, I got a job out of it. So I was like, well, I came here for work experience and I managed to pull a job out of this. I'm really happy about that.
It's made me more motivated to kind of go somewhere else and influence others as well into doing carpentry and woodwork.
350 years ago, we helped Londoners, and we should be doing the same thing now for all people.
I'm joined now by two of the Londoners involved in the project, Hamda and Atifa. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
How did you get involved in this incredible project in the first place? What happened?
Well, we are signed up with an agency that provides us with like part-time work and like work experience as well for like holidays and just like when you're in school as well. And they kind of sent us an email and we just set up a meeting from then on, and yeah.
It happened quite quickly, as I understand it.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, Atifa, was this something new to you? Were you already handy with power tools? Was this, you know, something that kind of thought, oh yeah, this is the kind of thing I do? Or was it completely new?
It was completely new. I had no idea how to use any of the tools. Like, when I heard about this project, I wasn't really sure. I didn't know it was about actually building these sculptures and stuff. I thought it was all about paper and everything. But then I found out, but it was really good.
And how has it been? I mean, a good experience, but, you know, overall, what are the memories that you'll take away and the skills that you've learned?
Just the people we've met and, like, the skills we've gained from it and, like, the jobs that we've been doing every day and, yeah.
The team working skills as well. So I normally prefer working independently, but in this project it taught me that to achieve the desired goal of building the entire sculpture, we all need to work together, otherwise it can't be done.
And how has it been going through that together and then, you know, sitting here and watching it burn together? What about that part of the experience?
It's really inspiring and emotional at the same time.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, sorry.
What do you think?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I think because we've been working together and we're like in a tent most of the time, you don't imagine it to like, you don't really see your work being watched by people and like actually out there till you're here, and like the turnout as well has been amazing.
Huge crowd who are now spontaneously, by the way, singing London's Burning in a round on the riverbank, which is incredible. Thank you so much, guys. Plus
it drew people together, like regardless of their age, gender, sexuality, colour, whatever. Like, there's no hatred or discrimination for this one amazing moment.
That's great. Thank you so much, guys. That's perfect.
Thank you.
You can see behind me now that the fireboats are in position and ready to extinguish the blaze, including the historic vessel, the Massey Shore. So we're going to have one last look at the blaze before they put it out. As the flames are being extinguished behind me, I want to catch up with two experts on putting out fires. It is Borough Commander from the London Fire Brigade, Rick Ogden, and the Director of the Massey Shore Education Trust, Tom Rogers. Welcome to you both. Rick, the London Fire Brigade has been a big part of organising this fantastic event tonight. I mean, how long was that process? How long does getting something like this together take, from your perspective?
I think the thing is there's lots of key agencies on the river, so one forgets what a busy kind of thoroughfare it is. It's one of the busiest waterways in Europe.
People keep comparing it to a motorway to me today.
Yeah, I think tonight's a bit like shutting the M1 in both directions probably, you know, so there's been lots of planning from Fire Brigade side and Port of London Authority, etc., and all the other kind of key partners to ensure that it's all come together at the most important time.
Is it one of the more unusual projects that you've been part of? I mean, I imagine you get all sorts.
I'm more used to kind of unusual incidents, I think, really, than projects. But I think as it goes, it's fantastic. It's certainly not your everyday occurrence tonight, but it's really good.
It is. It's been fabulous. There's also a very special vintage fireboat that's part of it today. Tom, the Massey Shore. Now, I didn't know much about the Massey Shore, but it's not your average fireboat. It has the most amazing history. So give me a potted history, if you can.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it is quite an extensive history, but she was built in 1935. She was built for the Thames, so she's dedicated London firefighting vessel, and her main purpose is to put out fires. And she's very unique. Her history is extensive, but one of the key events was she actually rescued troops from the beaches in Dunkirk during World War II. She brought about 500 troops back and forth to some of the larger vessels, and also brought about 100 back to the UK as well.
And then it's been rescued by enthusiasts not that long ago,
That's right, yes. So after she was decommissioned from the Fire Brigade in 1971, she was actually taken on by some sort of volunteers, and they sort of found Massey, and they actually bought her from the Fire Brigades and then set up the sort of educational trust to look after her and maintain her.
Okay, I've been glued to the Wikipedia on that one all weekend. So, Rick, back in 1666, of course, there was no fire brigade. I mean, what kind of technologies would people have been using to try and fight the fire then?
I think it's fair to say it was really basic back then. It was literally buckets, hand pumps and ceiling hooks, things, to pull the buildings down literally by hand.
So to create a break in the fire, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think back then it was all about the spread of it was so fierce and so quick that they were trying to get in really and just make a break to stop the spread, and eventually that's what they managed to do, and it burnt itself out.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for talking to me tonight. There we have it, the final event to mark months of hard work from hundreds of participants across the UK's capital city. London 1666 brings to a close London's Burning, a spectacular week of events commemorating the 350th anniversary of the Great Fire of London. We've explored the history of the time, looked at how this fantastic project was executed, and uncovered the social impact that the events had on local communities. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, you can of course watch back your favourite parts of the Burn on demand and share your experiences online. Thanks for watching, and I'll leave you to enjoy the final moments of the Burn. Good night.